notes for my September 2024 reading of 1895 story, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. This is a science fiction story about fixed points and time travel via a time machine. This is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, initially published back in 1895. And this is the May 2003 Bantam reissue edition paperback. Put the ISBN in the video description. I started the book yesterday on Thursday, 26 September 2024, and finished the book today on Friday, 27 September 2024. It's 115 pages, the story. Took me 2 days, 60 pages yesterday, Thursday, and 55 pages today, Friday. It is a public library copy. I went to the shelf. Josh had pulled it out a little bit from the shelf. And was like, I know what you're thinking. And so he had it ready for me when I went in. And I like to just pluck off the shelf, so I did. I figured where the fiction section is, it's a much larger section than the nonfiction biography section. Biography section. That has grown, to be fair. Okay, so that's the introduction. Oh, and I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, she, her, hers of Seattle. So this is King County Library System. All right, book notes, including construction and design. Great size, tiny, perfect, open and read. And it's small enough that you can actually open it and the pages stay relatively rigid. So there's like minor bending. Whereas like if it's a little bit bigger, then you kind of got like, it can be a little bit more depending on how the binding is done. It is full text and small text and size, you know, like 1.25 spacing on that small text. So it's a book, yeah, in that sense of like it's a wall of text. They're just tiny walls of text, but they're still a wall of text. That's the H.G. Wells author name on the even pages. Title of the book, The Time Machine, on odd pages. Page numbers all at the top. And then let's see, chapters are just chapter number. And there's like a 1-page biography at towards the beginning, and then there's a list of Bantam classics towards the end, which I did not read the list. I was like, come on, I'm just gonna read the story. There we go. Okay. I like it. It's a fun one. I guess book notes. I last read this. Well, I guess this is how to put it. Is this the exact same copy I read last time? So I read this back. The last time I read it was the summer of 2006, and it's September 2024. So I'm filming this Friday, 27 September 2024. So a wee bit over 18 years later, I have returned and I have read the book again. And I think last time it was, we were given, we had to read, I was in an honors class, social studies class, and we had to read a number of books over the summer. And we had to read a certain number in like different categories. And one of the categories was classics. And I was like, a time machine. And it was one of the few that we had at the library, 1. And 2, there was a movie that came out around that time, if I'm not mistaken, depicting this or it was in a film adaptation. There's stuff in there that's not in the book. But I remember being like, it might have been the same copy as the book notes, because it didn't have the movie art, and I was like, as long as it doesn't have the movie art, you know, I'm happy. And it didn't have the movie art, and I was like, all right, I'm happy. There we go. All right, reading notes. So when I go, I had like a general note, and then I'll go through what I tagged. So reading notes, I'm going to do 1/2 of a Fuji apple that I have cored and sliced into 4 pieces. So I'm going to do a snack as I go. So the story communicates a type of event/occurrence called a fixed point, something that happens and where time is not a variable, has to happen to keep moving forward, Those who took/take issue with this reality may retaliate by saying time always has to be a variable, which is inconsistent with reality at fixed points. Retaliation can come with blind spots. So you can think of this essentially as can think of a fixed point as placement in time of the event/occurrence is an output rather than time being an input. And the author communicates that a number of times. He takes this time machine and he tells the story to this group of people of what he did with the time machine. And he goes to 2 places in the future. In the first place he goes in the future, he communicates that as a fixed point by he needs to do blank, or he had to learn blank to interact with these people or stuff like that. But the communication of the internal state of the person is meant to kind of communicate like whether it's sped up or slowed down in the like amount of time it took, it still would have had to have passed. So it's not actually dependent on time whatsoever. Nor is it dependent on space. It's a weird kind of state specific. So fixed points are some of those. There's things that escape, so to speak, that are time invariant, right? They're situational. And so this book tries to communicate that by highlighting different events. And like, if he wants to travel with the time machine, he has to get back to the time machine. Right? And he had to have gotten separated from the time machine, so that kind of thing. So that's a, yeah. Okay. I think I have the rest of the notes marked. Page 18. There's somebody's brought up named Hetty Potter. And I was like, oh yeah, a lot of fiction in my lifetime has decided to loosely adapt names from science fiction of the past. So Harry Potter might have come from this book and Hetty Potter. Even's got like the double capital H, the E sound, and a double consonant in that first name, and then Potter. Page 36. The communication of a utopian where the triumph of humanity over nature. Control freaks ruin the world, essentially, in the future. Let's not have it go there. Okay, and that persists, comes up more than once in the book. Page 60. Another case of names being adapted to the future. The Eloi, spelled E-L-O-I. I read this and I kid you not, I thought Ewok. Like maybe Ewok. And I did back in 2006 as well. I read it and I was like, the only thing that comes to mind. And then like it pops in immediately is Ewok, which is a tiny furry little bear. And so I was like, how cute would that be? Elon, the furless Ewok. Instead of a naked mole rat, Elon's a furless Ewok. Okay, page 97. Oh, he talks about the progression of meat eating by humans and the descendants of humans. And each time meat runs out, or they have problems with the meat, they turn to what had been forbidden. So like if a religion says no meat, then they turn to it once the other meat options are gone. Okay. An interesting way to invoke, but he doesn't bring up like the word religion. It was like so how do you bring up religion in a science fiction novel if you don't actually want to like acknowledge religion, other religions? And so he chose the forbidden meats. And then page 112. So there's a narrator. The Great Gatsby is similar to this book. The Great Gatsby came out 30 years later. So for chronology there. And they both have a narrator telling the story or documenting the story. And then there's like this character. And so the narrator, in writing down the story of the time traveler talks about the story and like, you know, he time traveled and people question him on whether he did. And on page 112, narrator, the person writing that story, pulls a huge thing. Goes, do you? Instead of did you, do you? So he takes it from something done to something doing, an active state, and it screws it all up. The time traveler goes missing. So it's like a way of communicating. The only way to time travel is when unprompted. If prompted, it goes wrong. So there we go. Do you not know what the time crystals time travel? They're not, they're attempts in science to mine the mental states of certain individuals. So like a shady area of science. Yeah. Okay, so that's part of my conclusion. So in conclusion, or is my conclusion, marked full book number 45 for me for the 2024 year. A good one to return to. And I have a degree in geology and geophysics, and I can say reading that book now was a much different experience in terms of my geological takeaways than in the past. I was like, I've seen a lot of the stuff he mentions out in the field, like in nature and stuff, and I was just like, it's kind of cool. Like, physics has been a big deal of recent. Geology was a big deal when this came out, and we're transitioning to biology kind of being the big thing. And so it's kind of interesting because, like, in that sense of being mainstream and science fiction, geology was through first, then physics, now biology, but they're like, you know, apart. Their cycles are like 70 years apart. So in that sense, biology is like, not in its infancy, but like it's like a toddler compared to the other two. So, okay. So my notes for my September 2024 reading of 1895 Story at the Time Machine by H.G. Wells.